bio summary about Nilesh Oak. Nilesh Nilkant Oak is an author and writes extensively on ancient Indian history at WordPress. He is working on multiple Indic projects. He conducted original research and has written three books in the past which are critically acclaimed. He published When Did the Mahabharata War Happen? The Mystery of Arundhati in 2011, and the book was nominated for the Lectors Award given annually by the London School of Economics. He published the Historic Rama and the Bhishma Nirvana in 2014 and in 2018 respectively. Nilesh holds an executive MBA degree, an MS degree, and a BS degree. Both his MS and BS degrees were in chemical engineering, and he is also an adjunct faculty at School of Indic Studies, Institute of Advanced Sciences, Dartmouth, MA. He resides in Atlanta. Uh, as a chronology of Indian civilization is very ancient and is the mother of most of the civilizations of the world. Rig Veda is one of the oldest, if not the oldest, preserved text of humanity. Ancient Indian civilization made ingenious and original contributions to astronomy, navigation, agriculture, social infrastructure, philosophy, medicine, scientific acumen, and logical reasoning. It is then interesting to note that the dogma of Aryan invasion theory AIT was invented with which claimed that so-called Aryans came from somewhere outside India sometime after 2000 BC, but before 1200 BC, and brought with them either the Sanskrit or precursor to Sanskrit, which was then employed to compose Rig Veda. Many Indic researchers have shown the dogmatic and racistic nature of AIT. However, many of them have employed similar methods to propose in an arbitrary fashion a time travel of 8000 BC through 2000 BC for the ancient Indic civilization. Against this background, one wonders if there is an objective way to comprehend the antiquity of Indian civilization in the context to its original contributions to astronomy, agriculture, philosophy, medicine, and science. In this present, yeah, okay. So with this, I would like to welcome Professor Nilesh Oak here. And a small announcement before that is that we'll have this lecture for 1 hour, and we'll entertain questions after that for some time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. So this is what we will do, and please forgive me the location here. So let's go for. We started a little bit late, so let's go for 45 minutes. I'll listen to my monologue for 45 minutes, and as we go through that, think of questions that you may want to ask. I think that's the most interesting part when we get into question answer session. My objective for 45 minutes is to share some interesting things with you, in some sense to provoke you. Some of the things might surprise you in the sense, well, that's not what I read, or that's not what I heard, and this doesn't make sense, or this does make sense. It can happen in both directions. And then let's have an open question and answer session. Okay, sounds like a plan? All right. Untold Mysteries of Hindu Civilization. Let me give you, so three parts to this. Okay, so the first part is the context. Now, just for example, suppose if I tell you that I was in India 3 days ago, and now here I am in Indiana today with you. Any one of you is surprised as to the possibility of that happening, like me being in India 3 days ago and now here with you to speak about the Untold Mysteries? Anyone? No. It doesn't surprise you because of the context that we have. What if I would have said, if I had said the same sentence not that long ago, maybe just 200 years ago or 300 years ago, that I was in India 3 days ago and now I'm here, you would have said, I came to the wrong talk, to listen to the wrong person, let me get out of this room. Fair? Okay. That's because of the context. We have so many assumptions. We have an understanding of our civilization, understanding of the past, understanding of the science, technology, philosophy, everything, right? So the context matters. So even to understand a mystery, the context matters. About something, if we happen to know when, what, how, why, where, etc., then it's not a mystery. Would you agree? If we know everything about that thing, it's no longer a mystery. Okay. So for the context, this shows just a quick summary of like 30 plus years of my research work. Okay. So the timeline provides that critical context. And I just gave you an example. If I said I came from India, I was there 3 days ago, it's not a surprise to you. But if I would have made this same statement just 200 years ago, you would have said, well, we also have a medical department here, and you may want to go and see a psychologist or something like that, right? What you see in the left there is today where we are, 21st century, all the way to your right. Then the zero is that reference for ADCE, ADBC, or CAC, right? And then notice the numbers are negative. So minus 5K is minus 5,000, minus 10,000, minus 15,000, minus 20,000. Everyone with me? So this is going back in the past. This is going forward. Today is where we are. So what I did, I started sometime in 1995, specifically working on the problem of Mahabharata. Not going to go into the details. I'll talk about some of the resources. I have more than 100 plus YouTube talks, okay, 500 different blog articles, 3 books, and so I will encourage you to go into those details. And I'll briefly refer to that as a part of the mysteries, like how I came to that 5561 BCE, but just briefly. So what does that mean? More than 7,500 years ago. Okay, so if you're surprised, well, come on now, something is wrong. Okay, that's a good feeling. Okay. Um, then I also worked on the timing of Ramayana. Now, the way I did that is the Mahabharata based on the all the internal evidence of the Mahabharata text, nothing outside. Just 2 things: the Mahabharata text and astronomy, the modern astronomy, the Indian astronomy. That's it. Ditto for Ramayana. I took the Valmiki Ramayana and looked at all the astronomy evidence, and it took us to 12,209 BC, the very specific year, very specific day, and so on and so forth. So that's like more than 14,000 years ago. That's for Ramayana, more than 7,000 years ago for Mahabharata. And very recently, and when I say recently, sometime in 2016, some professor of Indian origin, but in USA, approached me and said he had looked at my Ramayana and Mahabharata work. And he said, well, can something be done for Rigveda? This was in 2016, and I had no idea. I mean, Rigveda, I had seen a book, but that's just about it. So initially, I started looking for astronomy evidence, and there is astronomy evidence, but not something that allows you to date Rigveda, because it's of a somewhat generic kind. But what I've found is that there is a lot of evidence from other disciplines of science. For example, hydrology, geology, morphodynamics of rivers, and so on. And based on that, this is what I came through. So this is work in progress, okay? But what can be said with the confidence, what can be asserted, which means there is evidence with the confidence, is that the Rigveda is not written at one point in time. In fact, if you know the story, Vyasa compiled it, recompiled it, re-edited at some point. So he has picked up pieces from different times. But whatever the evidence is there in the current version of Rigveda that we have, it tells us that some portions of it are from 6th millennium BC, a contemporary time with the Mahabharata, the same time as Mahabharata. Well, Vyasa was at the time of Mahabharata. But if you go backwards, we definitely know that some of the pieces of some of the portions of Rigveda are definitely more than 22,000 BC or 24,000 years old. How old, we don't know. We need to wait for some additional evidence, okay? Some of the things about the Saraswati, River Saraswati, now we know a lot about it than what we knew, say, 100 years ago. What we know, and this can change. As the new evidence comes, the things may change. But what we know for sure is that it definitely existed 70,000 years ago. Okay, we don't know how far back, but definitely not. If we go back, say, 150,000 years, we don't find any path of Saraswati right now. Now, if you go forward, like come towards us, we also have amazing, sufficient, significant evidence for Yamuna, which was also feeding Saraswati, separating from Saraswati, and now meeting Ganga. When I say now, I mean 50,000 years ago. In fact, more and more research is coming, and it now is like nailing it down to like a what is that 10,000 year period from 50,000 BC to 40,000 BC. Between this time, Yamuna separated from Saraswati and started meeting Ganga. Just keep this in mind. We'll see the relevance of it for the dating of Ramayana, dating of Mahabharata, dating of Rigveda, and dating some of the key milestones of Hindu civilization. Okay. Am I going at the right place? Okay. Then something interesting. Rigveda talks about a grand Saraswati. How many of you have heard that? That Rigveda, there was a grand Saraswati, no? Okay, so for example, Rigveda will describe Saraswati as Naditame, Ambitame, Devitame, Saraswati, the grandest of the grand river. It talks of Ganga, Yamuna, Sindhu, everything, and many more rivers, Satluj, but it says the grandest river is Saraswati. What the geological data and morphodynamic data of the rivers tell us is that Grand Saraswati was no longer there after 22,000 BC. Just to give you an idea, a river that was as wide as 22 kilometers in some places was down to 2, 3, 4 kilometers by 22,000 BC. Okay. Also, there is another data, which is this. Rigveda also describes Saraswati as a river that started in high mountains and flowed all the way to the ocean, and again being the grandest river. For example, Giribhya A Samudra, from the all the way to the mountains, all the way to the ocean. And we have now research coming up in last, let's say, from 1986, so whatever that time is, like 40 years. We have a research that tells us that there was no grand river in that area of Saraswati that flowed from mountains to the sea, or any river, grand river that went to the sea, anytime in last 10 to 12,000 years. What does that tell you? That definitely it was before that, and there is evidence for it. Okay, something interesting happened. This is very important for Ramayana again, and I'm not going to go in details, but some nuggets for you to remember. River Shatudri or Satluj, if you are familiar. Anyone from like a Punjab, Haryana area here? Okay, so Ropar or Rupanagar. So that's where you can see Satluj coming down, and if you look in a Google map, like it's like as if something happened and it's going straight westward. Okay, from there. There is a paleo channel. Everyone understands what paleo channel is? There is no water right now, but there was a path that you can track through various different technologies. Very wide path, 20, 25, 22 kilometers wide, that you can track of Satluj coming down all the way down to where Saraswati was. That Satluj turning westward, sharply westward. Now we have evidence coming from 2007, 17, IIT Kanpur and many universities in UK, that happened in 13,000 BCE. Okay, very, very important. Let's see. Then we have evidence, this is coming from climatology and many other studies, Anindya Sarkar paper 2016, that Saraswati started drying in 4500 BCE. We don't have an exact timing when it went completely dry, okay, but 4500 BCE, and we also know that it was really going sharp down at that point. All right. Now, what is interesting is, so that's the kind of a landscape. I mean, 30 years plus of work, and I'm not saying all of that is my work, especially the geology, geophysics, morphodynamics is the research of many other folks, like Mary Corti, 1986, Henry Frankfurt, 1992, these French researchers. Peter Clift from Aberdeen, now he's at Louisiana. That is a 2012 paper. Anindya Sarkar, Singh, 2017, Dave, 2018. And I mean, you just go to Google. That's the power of Google these days. You just type and you're going to get papers, you don't have to eat the insomnia cookies, You can be awake through the night just reading those papers. Okay? Now, against this context, think of this, and this was suggested to me by a British consultant that I worked with in some other aspects. I also do a consulting work. So he said, Nilesh, will you put this dot there? He has a good sense of humor. He said the European Enlightenment, and if you go to Wikipedia, it will say, it's estimated to be that 17th century, 18th century. And so somewhere around that time that our Yuva fellow who was introducing me and reading something about Aryan invasion theory. So the Aryan invasion theory's birth took place around that 1785 and after, if you know it. Okay. And what did they come up with? So they said, well, forget this, because of course they did not know this. They said, forget the civilization. The whole Indian civilization, starting with Rigveda, began sometime around that 1500 BC marker, where that arrow is. Aryan invasion theory, migration theory, and then I have a discredited and a star. Everyone sees that? Okay. So just to give you the context, so somebody came and gave us the different story that was around that time. Since then, all the research that is showing us is taking us into deep antiquity. Okay. So that's just the context of it. Against this, okay, these are my quickly three books on Amazon. If you are in India, there is now Indian editions of it. The historic Rama is had to be renamed for all technical publishing reasons into 12,209 BCE in India. All right. And my upcoming book, again, a working title, The History of Hindu Civilization. Coming soon, don't know when, so please don't ask me through email or social media when is it coming. When it comes, you will know. Okay, and some of the research work that I just shared with you, it's not in the books, like especially going back to Rigveda, but it will come into this fourth book. Okay, so with that marketing part out, let's get to the untold mysteries. When someone here asks me, like, say, okay, well, what topic, I asked them, what topic would you like me to speak about? And somebody said, how about untold mysteries of Hindu civilization? I said, yeah, that sounds great. So I went to PowerPoint and I typed the title, and I'm sure you are using those, so you know how that works. So as soon as I typed Untold Mysteries of Hindu Civilization, put my name down, entered, and then, lo and behold, like PowerPoint just suggested me the picture of Machu Picchu. Okay, so I said, okay, I'll put the picture of Machu Picchu. Maybe, it wants to tell me something. This is picture taken in 1912. This is not the picture it showed. It showed me a color picture. But this is the picture when first time in modern times Machu Picchu was discovered, 1912. Everyone knows this structure? Anyone here who doesn't have not heard Machu Picchu before? Okay, it's in Peru. Okay, and now it's a very powerful tourist destination and so on. Now, what's the connection of Machu Picchu and Ramayana? Well, that's our mystery number one. Anyone knows the connection of Machu Picchu and Ramayana? No? Okay, I don't know that either, so that's a mystery. Okay, that was a quick clickbait. I mean, I just saw that it showed up. But I don't want to disappoint you totally. Not far from Machu Picchu. Now, Machu Picchu is in Peru, near Cusco, at a very high altitude. How many of you have been to Peru? No one. Okay, so I can bluff whatever I want. Right? Okay. Just south of Lima, not far from Lima, the Bay of Pisco or Paracas area, there is this structure engraved into the mountain. Anyone has seen this before? No, okay, it's my day, I guess. I can say anything I want. It's known as the candelabra of Andes. The candle stand that you see on the dining table. Okay, so that's the name given to it, and nobody knows. I mean, there are a lot of speculations, but nobody knows who created this structure or which civilization or which people, particular tribes. What was the purpose when it was created? It's not known. There are a lot of speculations. Okay, that's there. Now, I want to take you to Valmiki Ramayana. How many of you are? How many? Yeah, well, how many of you have read Valmiki Ramayana? Okay, somebody there to check on me. The truth check. Now, even if you have not read Valmiki Ramayana, let's say if you remember this story. So Sita is taken by Ravana. Now Ram and Sugriv meet, and then now Ram requests Sugriv to look for Sita. Everyone knows that story. And what does Sugriv do? He creates 4 different parties of Vanara, and he sends them in 4 different directions. Vanaras is not monkeys, by the way, okay? Okay. So human beings. So he sends them in a 4 different directions. So one party goes to the east, west, north, and south. And Sugriva gives them indications what to look for. Yeah, like so me coming from Atlanta, take 75, then go 24, then take 65 north, something like this. And he's giving some milestones. What is interesting is he starts talking about the Raupe Deep, like our modern Thailand, possibly Yavadvip, possibly Indonesia, in the east direction from India. And he talks about then the Kshirosagar, Like we are trying to understand what that could be, maybe a Pacific Ocean, whatnot, or some other ocean. But then he talks about crossing that Kshirosagar and then coming to the end of the east direction. And in that description, he gives this description to the wanderers. He says, you may find something like this. And just to give a quick description, it's about 600 to 800 feet tall. So it's not a small object. It's engraved into that phosphate colorful rock there. And it's like, done by digging like up to 2 to 3 feet into it, sand and a rock. And this structure can be seen as far as like a 12 miles from the sea. Okay. Now, against this, uh, Sugriva's description to the Vanara party is going in the east direction, and after they cross the ocean, he says, you will see a structure like this. How many of you can read Sanskrit or Nagari? Oh, okay, I'm in trouble. Okay, you can read, so I cannot fake it, right? Okay, who wants to read it? Anyone? Yeah, Trishira Kanchana, Ketus Talus Tasya Mahatmana Stapita Parvatasagre Virajati Savedika. I'm not going to torture you. A quick high level translation: a three-headed golden flag shining on top of the mountain with base at the bottom. Okay, so this is not my discovery. Like someone named Chaman Lal, as early as 60 years ago, had mentioned this. And if you have heard Dr. P.V. Vartak, people from Pune should know. Then he has mentioned it like 40, 50 years ago. If there is any small contribution of mine, it is look at that last one. It says Virajati Savedika. Like Vedi is what? A Yajna Kunda, like a structure, and you put it at the bottom. And do you see that something at the bottom there? Okay, it's not a Photoshop, okay? At the bottom, you see that rectangle kind of thing. That's like a Savedika. With that, it exists. Now, so that's a description. Assuming that is the description of the structure, okay, for a minute. Now, that is like, okay, so that's like matches. Does it match? Those people who can understand at least the Sanskrit part, but also English. Trishira is like a trident, you has that. Um, the Valmiki Ramayana goes on to tell who created it, what was the purpose, and when was it created. How nice. Assuming again, of course, this same structure. He says the structure was created by Indra. Now that's our interpretation of it. Three Dasheshware, okay, or some god. And why was this created? Purvasya Dishi Nirmanam, to mark the east direction. Now, everyone comfortable with Chile? I mean, this is like a Peru's west coast as a east direction from the point of India. Earth is round, so we don't know when to stop, just like we have a day line right now. Okay. So that time he's saying that's the east direction. And he says it was, I did not write it there. It says Nirmanam Krutam. Now some people have translated that to mean in the Kruta Yuga, whatever that means. So it was created by Indra to mark the direction east in a Kruta Yuga. Now, how many of you think, well, maybe true, but maybe a pure coincidence? It's okay, right? Yeah, could be coincidence. I mean, try three pronged structure that could come up somewhere too. The direction is right? The direction is right. Okay. And what about the timing? Anyone remembers the timing of Ramayana that I said? 12,000. Very good. So more than 14,000 years ago. And what was there in North America or South America or Americas in general 14,000 years ago? Anyone? As far as human beings and civilization? Huh? Aztecas. And what was the time of Aztecas? Excellent. No, we don't know the timing. Okay, so Aztecas, Mayans, Incas, everyone with me? Clovis man in North America, and so on. So yes, there was a presence. Now, Clovis man, anyone knows the timing of Clovis man? No, okay. What you find is, if you go with what you call the typical academic consensus for the timing of it, it doesn't go more than 2,000 years, more than 3,000 years ago. Okay, but that's changing. For example, what I'm showing you here is a map of a genetic trail. This is genetics. The paper in Nature, coming from the who's who, if you know, like from Harvard, the Reich, and that group, coming in the Nature, possibly 2007, maybe. What it is showing is that a very small signal, but a statistically significant signal, because as the time goes back, the signal is going to get lost, especially if the continuous connection is not there between those human beings. You can see a genetic signal starting with India, that is the Andaman Nicobar Islands, Onge, going through Indonesia, going through Australia, all the way to South America. Okay, all the way to South America. Now, this is the genetic evidence. If you go for the archaeological evidence, when we think that, well, we don't know much. I mean, Aztecas great, but again, the timing, the modern scholarship puts at like a 2,000, 3,000 years ago. But now more research is coming out. For example, a lot of places in South America, but just focus on Monteverde, like in Chile, the last one at the bottom. There we have found evidence for human existence, some kind of human activity. Remember, as you go back, we get what we get. I mean, the beggars cannot be choosy. So in archaeology, you take what you get. You can demand. I like to see a palace. Tough luck. If it exists, it will be there. Otherwise, not. Right. But what it shows is that the genetics data shows the trail. And you know how old is this Monteverde in terms of the human presence and human activity? Want to take a guess? It goes to 33,000 years, 35,000 years. Okay, that's how far back it goes. Now, against that, if you start comparing the Sugriva's journey, because when I initially present to people, they said 12,000, please now give us a break. Well, not any longer. It doesn't look impossible. Are you with me? Okay, it doesn't look impossible. So 12,000 BC looks like, okay, that was yesterday. If you had something 33,000 BC. Let's look for some additional evidence. In the same chapter, exactly same chapter where that candelabra of Andes was described as a Trishira Kanchanas Ketu, there is a description. Now remember, this is what? Katha Yuktam. The history, Ityas is told to you in a way that can be interesting to all of us. Okay, everyone has heard the name John Steinbeck? Grapes of Wrath? No? Okay, American author, famous American author. No? So what he talks about is that you will remember a story, any one of us, if it is your story. You will remember that thing which is familiar. If it is foreign and alien, you will forget it. Okay, so when a history or Ityas is told to us in the form of epics, whether it's a Ramayana, Mahabharata, Iliad, Odyssey, it is narrated to us in a very interesting fashion. So we tend to remember it. Okay, so some words, like for example, what it is saying is that in this area there are frightening rakshasas called mandehas of different forms, fearsome, hanging down from the mountain peaks. Please pay attention to the description. Hanging down from the mountain peaks. And then it says, those Rakshasas keep dropping down in the water at the time of sunrise every day, scorched by the heat of the sun. Again and again, they keep hanging on to the cliffs. Any idea what this could be? Don't think like a Rakshasas, that your imagination of Rakshasas. How many of you have heard of vampire bats, other than the movies, of course? Vampire. There are bats everywhere. But if it comes to vampire bats, do you know where they are? Only South America. Only South America. Okay. That's how that looks like. There are few varieties. I'm just showing you one hanging down from the cliff of the rocks. Okay, inside this, and this is a skeleton to see how powerful the jaws they have, and they can get into the animals and suck the blood and so on. And here is one picture of actually that vampire bat sucking from the pig, the body of the pig. Okay, so there is a description very matching to this kind of creatures. Of course, they are called Rakshasas and Mandeyas and so on and so forth. Okay, they also happen to be in this region. Um, who is this creature? I'm moving on to the next one. Huh? Mammoths. Very good. Okay, so it looks like an elephant from a distance, right? There is a slight difference to it. What is it? Ears. Yeah. The horns. Yeah. So tusk, yeah, very good. So there are four tusks. It's not very easy to see in this picture. Okay, the four tusks, and there also goes by the name again within the mammoth family as Gompothere. Okay, and again, if you go back to that same Ramayana text, now let's go further. Okay, so Hanuman is now in Lanka searching for Sita, And when he goes around, he finds the palace. He looks at other things, beautiful things. He also looks at Pushpak Viman. We will skip Pushpak Viman for today, but maybe in a question answer session we can talk about it. And just next to the Pushpak Viman, next to the palace, he sees the palace being guarded by Rakshasas, but also by elephants with two tusks. Now that's not a surprise. We have seen elephants with two tusks. It says with the two tusks, three tusks, and four tusks. Okay, so that's the description of Valmiki Ramayana. Now, if you go back to paleontology, what you find that these mammoths and the Gompothere, they were seen around the world in the picture where they are marked, like X or dots or whatever it is. Okay, more or less everywhere. The Northern Africa, entire Americas, and then India, China, and also these are found in Thailand and Vietnam and so on, so on, so places. Now, you know what happens in an Indian context. If you know, you will hear, if you go to Wikipedia or so, that these creatures existed, say, 9 million years ago. Okay, and then many Indians jump and say what? They take this reference from Valmiki Ramayana and they say, okay, so Ramayana in 9 million years ago. Now, this could be true. I'm not saying it's not true. I don't know that. But what is wrong with this thinking? There is a logical fallacy here. Just because they existed in 9 million years ago doesn't mean they did not exist afterwards or before. Are you with me? And actually, just because now I have a timing in my mind for 14,000 years, I started looking, this is going back to 2014. I started looking for evidence that will tell me if they existed in the timeline I was looking for. Are you with me? The 14,000 years ago. And lo and behold, if you look for that evidence, North America, I mean, South, whole America is rich in that evidence, but so is the eastern part of Asia. Not in India so far, okay? But eastern part of Asia, like Thailand, Vietnam, and whatnot. And the timing for their existence in these parts of the world that I just mentioned actually goes back to 9,000 BC and before. So 11,000 before present to 13,000. So that's a corroborative evidence. Everyone follows what I'm saying? This doesn't prove Ramayana happened in 14,000 years ago, but if from some independent evidence, somebody has said it happened 12,000 BC or 14,000 years ago, and there is a description of an elephant with two or four tusks, everyone follows what I'm saying? This gives a corroborative evidence in a science speak. All right. Now the question is, how many of you have this question? If you have not seen my videos or read books before, okay. But how did you figure out that the Ramayana happened 12,000 BC? Anyone? How many of you have that question? How did I figure out? Okay. Okay. Let's look at one or two. Yeah, the answer I'm expecting is yes. I have that question. You know. If you look, read through the Valmiki Ramayana, relatively short book in comparison to Mahabharata. Mahabharata is what? 125,000 verses. Okay. Ramayana is compared to that a small pocket book. Not really, if you start reading, but 24,000 verses. What I did, and I'll show you my science slide there, but started reading right from the beginning, and anytime anything that sounded like an astronomy reference, I noted it down. So when I did that, it amounted to more than 575 plus references, astronomy references. References to planets, I mean, you can read that. References to season, because season has to do with astronomy and whatnot. Okay, the different stars, different planetary conjunctions, phases of the moon, particular lunar month matching with the season, and so on. Now, this one, the blue versus yellow, there is a difference, and I'll explain that in a minute, in the next slide. But I took one of those, like here, Brahma Rashi as a pole star. How many of you have seen a pole star in the sky? Okay, what is the name of our current pole star? Dhruva is a generic name, like pole star sort of translated is a Dhruva. Polaris, it's called Polaris, right? Now, everyone knows that the pole star, although it's supposed to be fixed, it doesn't remain fixed forever. Everyone knows that? Okay, because of astronomy phenomenon known as the precession of the equinoxes. The Earth's axis goes and makes a circle and takes 26,000 years. When that happens, uh, if the Earth's axis is pointing somewhere else, and if there happens to be a bright star, we will call that bright star a pole star of that time. If you go to Yuddha Kanda of Ramayana, this is what you find. Brahmarashir Vishuddhasya Shuddhasya Paramarshaya Archishmantah Prakashante Dhruvam Sarve Pradakshinam. This verse is saying, at the time of Ramayana, this is Lakshman is saying, as they are ready to leave from Kishkinda towards Lanka. He says the great sages are making parikrama around the Brahmarashi, around the pole star that is Brahmarashi, the pole star. And anyone knows what Brahmarashi is? Now, in Indian astronomy, Brahmarashi is very clearly identified as the same star as Abhijit, or those of you who are familiar with Western astronomy, Vega, VEGA, one of the brightest stars. Is used as a reference star for deciding the magnitude of the stars, who is how brighter and so on. So Polaris is what our pole star right now. And remember, this whole cycle is over 26,000 years, the complete cycle. If you go backwards, you can simulate using astronomy data, just a common understanding of astronomy. It takes you to that mean position of, say, approximately 11,000 BC. And the Polaris, the pole star right now, it's not exactly closest to the pole right now. In fact, it will be exactly, closest to the pole in about 80 years, 21st century, 2100. But we are considering that as a pole star for last 2000 years. Okay, so really, we want to take a range, and the range that we can take from that middle point of 12,048, and we can take it like a 10,000, approximately 10,000 to 14,000 years. In fact, this one reference, and there are many more, and I'm not going to go through this today, gave me that time frame, gave me that broad interval within which now I had to search for a specific year. Everyone follows that? Okay, so just this one reference is giving me, don't go below 10,000, don't go below above 14,000. It's not the exact. What about 9,500? Maybe doable, okay? But I'm just showing some numbers. Okay, now what this did is it got myself interested in one of my co-researcher, because what is interesting is when the Abhijit or Brahmarashi or Vega is a pole star in the north, that is the brightest pole star we will ever have in northern hemisphere. It was there 12,000 BC. It will be there 13,000 years from now again, because remember that 26,000 year cycle. Okay, so when we were simulating this, and this is not a surprise to people who work in astronomy, exactly at the same time, you see another bright star in the south becoming also a pole star for the southern hemisphere. Okay, anyone knows what the name is? Canopus, or in Indian astronomy, Agastya. Okay, so we were curious, and we were looking through Surya Siddhanta, and this verse that I'm showing here is from Surya Siddhanta. Without reading the Sanskrit verse, what I will tell you what it says. It says there are actually, it says there are, when the verse was written, there are two pole stars in the sky, not two pole stars in the northern hemisphere, one here, one there. And if seen, the second line, Nirakshadesha Sausthana Ubhaye Kshitijashriya, if seen from the equator, like say Singapore, for example, okay, seen from the equator, one star will be seen at the horizon on the north side, another one will be seen at the horizon on the south side. You follow? Okay. And then, then it says like their position will be close to the pole star, like a 90 degree on both sides. So what we did is we said, well, let's explore when Surya Siddhanta could have written this. Okay, so you can call this a mystery of two pole stars. Okay, so this, what you see on the left side is the north ecliptic pole area, and that's the precision cycle. Okay, and the other side is the southern ecliptic pole area. What I'm just circling right now is our current pole star, Polaris. Okay, in our times. You see that purple circle, everyone? Okay. Now, if you look at right now on the left side, there is no pole star. There is no bright star next to that point. Down there, the plus 2000 on the south ecliptic side. It will be exactly opposite. Stay with me, okay? Because north versus south. Now, if you want to look for combinations certain times when you have a pole star in the north, pole star in the south, you can actually find few. For example, I'm showing you here on this side that star that is circled with that other circle is known as Thuban. Okay, English name Thuban. In an Indian astronomy, that's called one of the tail star of the constellation Draco. You see the constellation Draco in between, like snake-like thing at in the middle and going like a line. Okay, Shishumar. In Indian astronomy, it is called Shishumar. So when that star was existing as a pole star in 3000 BC, we can find some star there in the southern region too. In fact, we can find many combinations. So we were curious that when the Abhijit was a pole star, was there, it is not, Abhijit is mentioned as a pole star, but two pole stars is not mentioned in Ramayana, at least not directly. Afterwards, we found indirectly it is mentioned. But we were looking for some direct reference, and we found that in Surya Siddhanta, those two pole stars. But just because we see a reference for two pole stars, just like the candelabra of Andes, it's not a guarantee that it's that one. So we said, let's do a scientific investigation of it. Everyone at Purdue should be very familiar with the basic scientific method. If you have a problem, to solve the problem, you propose a solution. That's what you do in a research, right? You propose, so the theory at the top. So theory is a proposed solution to solve a specific problem. Then you look at the evidence. Many times the evidence is the one that got you into the problem in the first place you're trying to solve. And then you want to somehow objectively test it, objectively test your theory in the context of the problem you're trying to solve. You use some background knowledge as appropriate, and you try to predict or infer from it. So remember, we have one evidence from Surya Siddhanta, two pole stars. We have that, right? One each on both sides. In that same chapter of Surya Siddhanta, and Surya Siddhanta gives this number twice, it gives the Earth's obliquity. See, Earth axis is inclined at an angle. Anyone knows the number today? It's like 23.4 or 23.5, something like this, okay? But it's not constant. Actually, so Earth's axis is going like this. That's precession of equinoxes, like this. But it's also doing a nod. That is that obliquity. So it's doing this, and it's also simultaneously doing this. Okay, so this is obliquity, this is the precession. So the Earth's obliquity that is given in Surya Siddhanta is 24 degrees. Okay, now you say, what's the big difference? 23.5, 24. In astronomy, it's a huge deal. Okay, so because this nod of the axis. So if I start from here, go here and come back, do you know how long that time is? 41,000 years. Just this node going from 22.5 to 24 and some more and coming there is 41,000 years. So there are multiple these different cycles in astronomy. So the third point was the point of periapsis and apopsis, and I'm going to go fast through this. If you go to YouTube and type my name and Surya Siddhanta, you're going to see the whole talk. Okay, the paper I presented at Oxford and I have presented somewhere else again. Okay. But there were 3 points I could match. So it's not like one point and a coincidence and I have to stop. So when we matched those 3 points, we found something very interesting. But before I show that to you, how many of you are here from the physics department? Cosmology, yeah, Ptolemy, from Ptolemy, I mean, you may not be working on that, but everyone knows the Ptolemy to Copernicus, to Tycho Brahe, to Kepler, to Newton, Galileo, Einstein, right? Okay. So Kepler's law, directionally, some of you know what it is? Okay. There is this verse when we were searching this, that's my third reference that I showed you about the periapsis and apopsis. Atyasannataya tena grishme tivrakararave deva bhage suranam tu hemante mantanyatha. Basically, it is saying the point of apopsis and point of periapsis were exactly at the middle of the Grishma season and middle of the Hemanta season, each season of 2 months. And if you do this calculation, there is one very specific time period that you come to that matches all the 3 references, and that's 12,000 BC. Okay, so if you are just looking at the 2 pole stars, you can find multiple combinations. Everyone with me? You can find multiple combinations. But if you want to find 2 pole stars, obliquity equal to 24 degrees, and the points of periapsis and apopsis, the farthest from the sun and closest to the sun, and which exactly the season of Grishma, season of Hemanta, Okay, then you exactly match all three together for 12,000 BC. When I say 12,000 BC, understand 12,000 BC plus minus 100 years. That's fine. Okay. Now, quickly on how I figured out the Mahabharata time. Okay. Very, very similar logic. How many of you have used vernier caliper in the past, right? Good. Okay. So tell me if this makes sense. So, so what we do is if you want to measure the object, like say diameter of this ring or something like this, okay, we put those into these prongs at the top here. Okay. There are two scales. One is the major scale. We take a reading, approximate reading, and then we go to the secondary scale, finer scale, vernier scale, and try to see which line matches with which. Then we do a quick calculation for the precision, multiply that number, it tells you what is that dimension, right? Now, would you agree that suppose if you make a mistake in putting the object into the vernier caliper in a wrong fashion, like you don't do it right, which is to say, if you make a blunder in defining the approximately right, meaning the main scale reading, if you make a mistake there, it doesn't matter how accurate you take the reading on the secondary scale or vernier scale. Do you agree? What you're going to end up with is very precise answer. Yeah, you might have a 2.00829 whatever, but it's precisely wrong because your first approximate reading is wrong. Everyone follows me? Okay. So keep that in mind to understand what I did here. This is a principle of a scientific acumen, so in English we'll call it classification, in Sanskrit Vargikaran. What it says is you have to divide the data in appropriate fashion to get to the right answer. The observations that you see in the blue, what they allow you to do is get to that region, approximately right region. Are you with me? Yeah, remember the drunkard finding his lost coin? That story, and he's searching for somewhere where there is a light, but he lost 2 miles away, something like this. We need to get it approximately right before we look for precisely accurate answer. Okay, so that's very important. I'm going to take something from approximately right, the AV observation or Arundhati Vasishtha observation. Again, I'll not go through that, but go through all the details. There are like hour-long talks, just explaining Arundhati Vasishtha on a YouTube or in the books or a blog. This is very interesting. This is how my journey started, by the way, in 1995. So, number of you are here, working on your masters, PhDs, whatnot. I had just finished my masters. Thesis was ready but not submitted. Okay, and I had some free time, just waiting for it. So I went to a library. This is in Alberta, Canada, and I happened to land on these words. Yachesha Visuta Rajastra Loke Sadhu Sammata Arundhati Tayapesha Vasishta Prashtata Kruta. In short, it is saying Vyasa is saying in Mahabharata that when the Mahabharata Yuddha or the war was ready to, begin, ready to uh, just going to start the next day or so, he says, he gives a list of different nimitta, different in science, what is happening in the sky, just like astronomy indications we saw for Ramayana. And he says the Arundhati, in this case, not Arundhati as a lady, Arundhati as a star in the sky, is walking ahead of Vasishtha. And why this was a big deal? This was a big deal because if you go right now at middle of the night, wherever when this available, and take a binocular, our eyesights are getting poorer every day. You will see that Vasishtha is going ahead, the star Mizar, and Arundhati is Alcor is going behind. So Arundhati is walking behind Vasishtha in our times. Astronomically, if you go back, do the mathematical calculations or simulations, go 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 years, it's still Vasishtha going ahead, Arundhati going behind. If you go to YouTube and if you type AV observation, you will get a 10-minute video. Please do watch that. Okay, it takes you AV observation in YouTube. It takes you through 18,000 years of that history. And when just now it's walking behind Vasishtha, but there was a time when it was indeed walking ahead of Vasishtha. Arundhati was walking ahead of Vasishtha. So now put your scientific hat, the logical reasoning. Vyasa in Mahabharata says at the time of Mahabharata war, Arundhati was walking ahead of Vasishtha. In our times, it does not walk ahead of Vasishtha. If you go back 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 years, it does not walk ahead of Vasishtha. But then the time comes when it indeed walks ahead of Vasishtha, going backwards. So if that statement of Vyasa is correct, if you do that triangulation of explanation, prediction, testing, then Mahabharata time ought to be, or could be, or plausibly between that time period when Arundhati was walking ahead of Vasishta. Everyone follows what I'm saying? Okay. So now what's the big deal? There are more than 100 plus Mahabharata researchers trying to find the timing of Mahabharata, and that's the good news. But every one of them, with the exception of four, don't even show any awareness of Arundhati Vasishta observation. Or those who do, they just quickly skip away, hoping that nobody notices. Okay, only four people mention it, and of course, they did not succeed in doing it. I did not know all of this, by the way, when I ran into that observation. In fact, naively, I thought, I know Arundhati, meaning the Alcor. I know Mizar. Okay, this must be a weekend, something on the weekend I can finish. Yeah. How many of you are engineers? Okay. No, me being one of you, I thought, yeah, I can finish over a weekend. Okay. It took me 15 years. So 1995 to 2009. Okay, to figure that out. Um, quickly, just to geometrically, I want to show you one quick shot here. So this is what it is. The circle that you see there is that Earth's axis, the precession path. Like Earth's axis is going there and charting a elliptical or circle in the sky. That is that dotted circle. Everyone with me? Okay. So when that goes, the pole star will change. But what happens when the point of pole star changes? How the other stars going around that pole star, as seen from the Earth, their orientation also changes. And that's what creates this mystery or a magic. So I draw a straight line through Arundhati Vasishta that goes through that point A and B through that circle. And essentially, what it's saying is ACB is where Vasishta will walk ahead of Arundhati, which is the case now, like point C, our times. Okay. And if you don't understand, that's fine. You know, the YouTube will fix the job for you. Then a point A and B, when the pole star is there, not pole star, the NCP, the North Celestial Point is there, we will see both Arundhati and Vasishta walk together. Nobody ahead, nobody behind. Okay? And anytime when the North Celestial Point is between A, X, and B, and the X being the my year of Mahabharat war, you will see that Arundhati is walking ahead of Vasishta. Just a geometric thing, okay, as seen from the Earth. Okay? All right. So if that is the case, we know that Mahabharata war possibly happened there. So I didn't stop there. That's just my one reference, approximate reading. I did that for the second, Bhishma Nirvan, and so on and so forth. And then more than 300 specific observation, like a jigsaw puzzle to 5561 BCE. Okay. Quickly, last one, and we will stop. Um, Kumbhakarna. How many of you have heard this name? Okay, almost everyone is familiar. Okay, again a Ramayana character. Anyone here from discipline of medicine, working on a medicine degree of some kind? No, no psychology, nothing. Okay, sleep disorders, eating disorders, right? If you think of Kumbhakarna, what comes to mind? Yeah, eats a lot and sleeps a lot. Fair? Okay. So when we look at this, what you would have thought, at least I'll tell you what I thought. I thought, that's exaggeration, like embellishment. Maybe he likes to sleep a lot, and somebody said he sleeps for 6 months, and so on and so forth. But 2008, so more than 10 years ago, I'm a chemical engineer by profession, by the way, and I was working on certain cream that was a blend of Ayurveda and aromatherapy. So I had a French business partner, and we were working together. And so because we are working on sleep related issue or jet lag related issue, because we both were world travelers, and so jet lag was on our mind. So I was reading everything possible on the sleep disorders or what happens with sleep. And I came across one character, like a case study. And I just read it. It was a case study of a 14-year-old boy with a very unique disease, unique situation, sleep related situation. And as I was reading, suddenly what came to my mind is Kumbhakarna. Okay, so that caught the bug. So I said, okay, let me see if how far I can push this. This is back in 2008. So I called. This is in Atlanta. So I called few my Indian friends, and just like I'm asking you, like, what do you know of Kumbhakarna? I said, okay, don't read anything. Just tell me what you know of Kumbhakarna. So typically ate a lot, and then some people said more things like he was very brave and tall and stuff like that. So I started studying this literature. We see this picture. And there is a disease. That's why I asked if there are people from medicine background. There is a disease called now named after two individuals who kind of studied on it, called Klein-Levin syndrome or KLS. Okay, you can quickly read the description. Basically, lots of sleep and lots of hyperphagia. Lots of drinking, lots of eating disorder, and so on. Now, maybe so, but can we match this description with Kumbhakarna? So this is what I studied between 2008 to 2014 in parallel with other things. And here I just want to give you a quick comparison. So Kumbhakarna could be an embellishment, could be an exaggeration, or could be actually a real thing. Could it be a real thing? Let's check. So hypersomnia, like excessive sleepiness. Yeah. So that is the what KLS says, and Kumbhakarna, we know that that's an excellent match, right? But you'll be surprised that there are some surprises that many of you may not know about Kumbhakarna. The next one is also very easy: hyperphagia, excessive abnormal hunger, eating without discrimination, and again, excellent match, right? He eats a lot. Before even they wake him up, what do? They keep the foods ready. And I don't know if you know this. So he ate that and he says, "Let me go." They said, "No, no, no. Ravana wants to see you first." Then he went and took a shower. By the time he came out of a shower, he was hungry again. Go back and read the Valmiki Ramayana description. And these people, they knew that they had the food and drinks ready. Okay, so and that's what we'll get to the treatment, the patient management, 14,000 years ago in a minute. Okay, the next one, I don't know if how many of you knew this. Again, that was a surprise to me. One of the conditions shown in 50% of the patient is hypersexuality. Okay, now I bet none of you know about Kumbhakarna's hypersexuality. Okay, remember, Kumbhakarna is a secondary, tertiary character in the whole Ramayana. Even then, you can find the references. If you go to Google again, just type say Kumbhakarna and a KLS and type Nilesh or myind.net. I wrote a brief article, not a long one, but you can read those exact evidences or exact descriptions. That when he was young, he used to steal other people's wives. Okay, and Ravana describes his condition as, now if you know the Sanskrit, then you will know. He says Gramya Sukhe, the rustic pleasures. He's busy in rustic pleasures. Okay, or the word he describes as Kamo Pahata Chetana. Okay, just being crazy with a desire. So you see that situation. Irritability, that's kind of generic. I mean, we all are irritated at something, right? So I'll just skip that. But actually, there are a lot of good descriptions in Ramayana. Episode duration. This is very interesting. This when I started 2008, the longest the person with a KLS with the longest duration I found was 90 days, 3 months, and Kumbhakarna was described as a 6 months, if you remember. Okay, so I said, okay, if I go with this, people say, but come on, where is the 6 months? So that's not the only reason. I waited. I said, okay, if Kumbhakarna's case is correct, then I have to just wait and a new data point will show up. That showed up in 2015. Okay, now there is actually a case where in our times, that person's sleepiness lasted for 12 months. Now, when I say sleepiness, they actually do get up to eat and do the basic bodily activities, but then immediately they go back to sleep. You can go to YouTube and type Klein-Levin syndrome and you'll find some documentaries and so on and so forth. So that also match. What is interesting is that Kumbhakarna, we only know about the 6 months, right? Generally 6 months we know, and then one day. If you read Ramayana, actually Ravan is talking about, he says, sometimes he sleeps for 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, 10 months. Okay, and you can see that variable duration in KLS patients. So it's not exact time period. Interval between episodes, like typically 0 to 72 months. And if you read Ramayana, you'll see that that is the case too. Okay, like few months, sometimes few days, and so on. Behavior when not in KLS, the modern observations are the person is perfectly normal, high IQ, very capable, good sense of moral principles, everything. But once they get in KLS, everything goes off. Okay, very true in case of Kumbhakarna. Onset of KLS, typical age, that also matches. I'll skip through this. Causes of KLS, last 2 points important. The modern medicine science doesn't know what causes KLS. Okay, they have come up with multiple speculations, injury to hypothalamus and all kinds of things, but truly they don't know. Now, when you truly don't know the answer to a specific problem, mystery, whatever you want to call it, typically what happens? When you don't know the true answer, what happens? Guess, which means what? We have multiple theories. It could be because of this, could be because of this, could be because of this, and so on. Okay, I'll give you a modern example. That's something you all can relate to. But what is interesting in Valmiki Ramayana is that the same book, 24,000 verses, there are three different, independent, conflicting, contradicting theories for Kumbhakarna's condition. In one case, the goddess Saraswati comes and curses him. In another case, it is the Brahma, right? And the third case, it is just said, I don't know, it's a Brahma shap. That's what Ravana says. So generally, when the true answer is not known, you will find all kinds of theories show up. Just a simple example. I'll come to that in a second. The last one is very interesting. The modern recommendation, the medicinal recommendation for a patient management is simply this. Because there is no solution, they say, make a room very comfortable for the patient, make it dark, make it pleasant because they become irritable. Okay, have some pleasant perfumes or pleasant incense or something like this. Make the food ready when he or she wakes up. Make the arrangement very comfortable. Okay, that's what the modern recommendations are. Do you know what Ravana did to Kumbhakarna in Ramayana? Actually, Kumbhakarna goes to Ravan and says, I'm getting this episode again. I'm just making it up as an episode, but situation. Please build a underground, nice, sleeping arrangement for me. And the Ramayan descriptions are that a arrangement was made where there the sunlight doesn't reach directly. There was the arrangement was very beautiful, very comfortable. Perfumes were floated into the air to make him comfortable. Okay, the air was made in such a way that it was circulated. Now, don't ask me where was the compressor. Okay, but these are the Valmiki Ramayana descriptions, which again match with our current recommendation. Now, coming back to the second last point I said, when we don't know the true answer, we come up with multiple different theories. None of them may be satisfactory, but all of them may be interesting. We have in Ramayana three stories. Everyone knows this, quantum mechanics. We know that it works. It is one of the very successful technology. That is how I'm speaking to you through the microphone here. That's how our smartphone works. All the electronics gadgets works. Everyone knows that. But as to what exactly is the theory behind the quantum mechanical phenomenon, we have what, 14, 15, 16, 17 theories, and with an open status. So that's what happens when we truly don't know the answer. We will have multiple suggestions. Quickly to the last point. Okay, so this is path forward. Now, some of you may be asking, or you should ask, so what? Okay, so it's interesting, little bit of fun. Why should we bother even knowing about this? Okay, so one simple one is Satyameva Jayate, the truth matters, but this is okay. There are different types of truth. On the April Fool Day, truth doesn't matter, right? Actually, we get a fun out of that in a different way, right? In a business, we think it's okay not to speak truth. We think whether it's right or wrong is a different issue, right? Or if we think me speaking not truth or me speaking a false thing, if it's going to benefit somebody or benefit more number of people, it's an okay thing to do. Would you agree? That's how we tend to think. In fact, just because we're talking about the Hindu civilization, that is actually a twisted understanding of what dharma, artha, kama, like a desire to have some humor. That is our April Fool Day kind of thing. Okay, dharma meaning if it benefits masses, it's okay to do it, right? Artha, if I'm going to profit from it in a business or otherwise, it's okay to do it. That's a twisted form of it. But what is the other benefit of Satya? I mean, why bother? Why bother about the truth? Like, trying to truly find out what happened or truly find out what might have happened. What are your answers? What are some of the reasons? Why care for the truth? Maybe practical, not some philosophical.
Learn from past mistakes.
Learn from past mistakes, right? How many of you would have seen this? But for example, if you go to YouTube and type Warren Buffett and integrity, number of you would know this. He says when you hire a person, would you hire with the highest IQ or highest grade and so on? He says more than likely not, right? What will you look for? And just as I mentioned, he mentions integrity. That think of that as a satya or sat, what is. energy and intelligence. And how many of you have seen that Warren Buffett clip? If not, he says, if the person that you want to hire or otherwise doesn't have integrity, do you want that person to be energetic and intelligent? No. He says, well, if the person doesn't have integrity, then you better want that person to be lazy and dumb. Because if there is no integrity, he or she is going to create a lot more problems, a lot more havoc, right? And destruction. So that's integrity in a sense of a sat. This is from Upanishad. It says, Satyena labhyas tapasa yesha atma, samyak jnanena brahmacharyena nityam. Four things. Okay, so one is a satya. Why go for a satya? And how do you get to satya? Through tapascharya, like through hard efforts, learning in an iterative fashion. Samyak jnanena, having an indifferent attitude, a neutral attitude when you are searching for something, not bringing your biases to the table. And brahmacharya, in this case, like immediately brahmacharya means what we think, celibacy. Celibacy is the one aspect of it. Brahmacharya in this case is what? Studying, self-study, swadhyaya, chintan, manan, contemplation, thinking, trying to solve the problem. And why do we do that? The Upanishad says is if you want to see the Atma. Now it says, okay, well, I don't want to see Atma. That's fine too, right? But let's take a practical symptom of you understanding the Atma, you understanding the Sat. You know what it is? Like if you ask, I mean, how many of you really think, okay, I really worry what's going to happen to me after I die? I mean, it's a generic worry, I understand. But how many of you think about it 24/7? No. So what do you want out of this life? Forget what happens afterwards. What do you want out of this life? Happiness, very good. Yeah, so the Upanishad says that, right? So what does it say? It starts Anna Brahmeti Vejanat, the Anna is a Brahma. Pranam Brahmeti Vejanat, Mano Brahmeti Vejanat, Vijnana Brahmeti Vejanat, and the last one is the Ananda Brahmeti Vejanat. So Ananda. What is that? In a different language, it's the rapture of living. We don't so much care what will happen after. It's okay to care about that. But when we are living, we want to have this rapture of living, the feeling that I'm alive, I'm doing something, it's exciting. When you are ready to die on your deathbed, you feel like I had a fulfilling life. I lived in the way I wanted to live. I did something, I contributed something, society gave something to me, I gave something back to it. Right? So, in that sense, it is that search. And once you have that, you will not go for a quick fix. Because you know what happens to get in the limelight, you will see many researchers, especially in the Indic space, but that happens everywhere. Like you remember the cold fusion many years ago? The theory of cold fusion came and people even claimed that the experiment was right, and then of course it was found to be a fraud. Okay, but that happens here. Like so you will say our the civilization search, like Indic civilization research, you will find all kinds of people will all kinds of things people will claim to get a quick popularity. Like me claiming here, like certain date, like is this true? What is my objective? In fact, I'll tell you, when you get into this, it's not, I mean, if you want to get a quick popularity, and this is not the area. Like when I published my first book, my very dear friend, he called me and he said he was worried about me, that me spending time on the deciding the timing of Ramayana or Mahabharata. And he said, is it okay to tell my other friends that you are my friend? Like he's worried, he doesn't want to identify with the nut. Okay, so that's usually what you will get. Okay. All right, so I'm going to skip through this, so I leave time for a question answer. If it comes in a question answer, I'll go here. So just the last slide here. So time for questions, objections, quickly three books. If you can want to go to blog articles, I've written more than 500 blog articles like wordpress.nileshok.com. Okay, you can read again related to the ancient Indian history. Okay, as a broad subject. Twitter, if you, I know somebody said he or she follows me on the Twitter, yeah. So that's there. Facebook, if you're interested, I know you're busy with your studies. There is a closed group, Nilesh Oaks Research Discussion Group. Okay. Now, if you decide to join it, do some basic YouTube watching or some blog reading or books or something. Don't just come there and start like totally raw and ask the question that's been answered like 1,000 times before. Okay. And your students, I wouldn't ask that, but there are no the non-students here. If you want to contribute in some fashion to what the work I'm doing, and many of my co-researchers. You may do it on Patreon. Let's stop here and let's take some questions. Was this some fun?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the first thing which we started with that the candle-like structure, right? Candelabra.
Yeah.
So you said that it could be a coincidence or it could be true. Uh, is there not any way to like similar to carbon dating or something like that which can identify when was that structure?
Yeah. So the question is the candelabra of Andes that I showed in Peru. It could be a coincidence or whatnot. Is there